everybody, and welcome back to PandaCast. I am Rainbow Red Panda, and today I want to talk about a little more of a serious side of the wrestling community, and that is involving the wrestling fans. This year has been a weird year for the world. Everything going on with COVID and all the other issues that we're dealing with in the world right now, and then, a lot of companies of all types have lost work, jobs, income, all of that. And the wrestling world was definitely affected by this. So this year, we've mainly seen a lot of televised events be done without crowds of any sort. This was challenging for viewers because you're not getting the same experience they're used to watching on TV every week. This was definitely different for the performers. A lot of them feed off of the energy, and it's sort of even part of the matches. With a lot of certainty that there are going to be parts where they cheer in this part or they boo in this part, and you're sort of anticipating that. And some companies have done a better job at others with keeping things as consistent as possible. I think that the work that AEW did in the beginning with having a lot of their own talent and employees ringside because they couldn't physically have fans, I think that worked really well for them, and I think it really helped change the way that the other companies did their shows as well. But with fans, you have the good side, and then there's also the darker side. And I think that the darker side are things that don't get talked about as much, but they definitely should be. So I would say you have the correct way to be a fan of anything, in this case, professional wrestling. And then you also have the toxic trolls that are either fans for the wrong reasons. They're not really fans at all. Maybe they're just hate watching it, or maybe they have something going on in their own lives that just makes them be just so toxic to people that they see on screens. Because we definitely live in a time, it feels like, where people that you see online or on a TV screen, or just any way that you're seeing someone that's not face to face, you sort of disregard them as being an actual human. And that's kind of sad in a way, because at the end of the day, we're all just humans trying to live our lives. And I think that sometimes that is forgotten. So this year we've had everything from wrestlers coming out on their own and sort of having their own Me Too movement. And I think that was very positive in showing, one, that behavior is not accepted in any capacity, no matter what your job, your skill, your level, any of that. That isn't okay. It's not okay if you're, a Hollywood A-lister. It's not okay if you're a restaurant worker. It's not okay if you're a professional wrestler, whether you're on the grandest stage of them all, or you're just a small indie wrestler that wrestles in front of a couple hundred people a show. It's not okay. And I think that all of the people, whether it be men, women, whatever, anyone that had a negative backstage occurrence with another talent, I think that they all did the right thing in coming forward, and all of that was taken for the most part positively. We do have some odd occurrences of people that just made themselves more toxic by being accused because they just didn't take it well. Some people, I hope, have learned from this experience, and then you have people that are just being the biggest baby about it, and we will hopefully never hear from those people again, but who knows. But that really set off a lot of things, because when that happened, you had a lot of people blaming the victims, a lot of fans being like, no, that's my favorite wrestler, they would never do such a thing. And yes, they could be your favorite wrestler. I don't know in this instance that I had anyone that I was really in love with their talent that came out as being some sort of predator or negative person backstage, but you have to realize that, you know, you love this person because of what they're showing you on a screen, what they're portraying as their character. And their character might be the best person in the world, but that's the point. So, yes, in front of a camera, they might be this great person, but behind the scenes, they might not, you know, they might be some sort of predator, or they might feel like they're in a position with a company where they can take advantage of people and think that they can get away with it. And I think that people coming forward and talking about it was definitely a step in the right direction. And hopefully nothing like that ever has to happen again. Hopefully we don't have to have a repeat on any scale of, you know, just many sexual misconduct claims coming out all at once, because it's disgusting. And the way that some of the fans, you know, a lot of these people, the victims that came forward, they found themselves defending themselves on social media like, how dare you say that this didn't happen? Like, this is my life. This was a deeply traumatic experience. And I feel like as a fan, they're putting that information out there, not for the fans to condemn this wrestler, but to mainly get it out there so that you know that if you're going to a show that has that talent, then that show either doesn't know about the claim or they don't take sexual harassment seriously, and you shouldn't support that company. So by siding with the person who is being accused of something, you're sort of doing more harm than good, and you could be really affecting somebody's mental state instead of just, you know, if you disagree, you can easily just keep scrolling, not talk about it, not engage, because it's not being put out there to be like a he said, she said kind of situation. It's just, here are the facts, here's whatever proof I have. You know, I'm bringing this forward because, at least in indie wrestling, it's not like they just work for one organization, they work for many. So you have to kind of put it out there in a semi-public way, one, to encourage other people to also potentially come forward, because there is strength in numbers and people do feel safer to talk about things when they feel a group mentality. And then also, it's just not good. So like, as a fan, it's not good to bash anyone that has a different opinion on one of your favorite wrestlers. We all have different favorites, and there are thousands of different wrestlers, and not everyone is going to have the exact same mindset and the exact same mentality. Everyone is different. So at least with that situation, I feel like so many people were being bullied off of the internet and off of standing their ground and speaking their truth and trying their best, you know, to heal from the situation and to overcome it, just because as fans, people felt to overstep their bounds and get involved in something that was really a behind the scenes kind of issue. It wasn't something that a fan can say, oh no, I know they didn't do it, because you weren't there. You don't live in the locker rooms. You're just a fan. And as much as we want to believe that we are these wrestlers' best friends and all of that, at the end of the day, we are just fans. And I like being a fan. I love watching the content, and I love the stories, and I love feeling for people and rooting for the underdog and all of that. But that's my role in this organization in the grand scheme of it. So, you know, try to keep that in mind, especially with those kind of sensitive topics. The other types of toxic wrestling fans, there's been many all throughout my years of watching wrestling. That I remember the very first live show that I went to, I was sitting in my seat, and like a couple rows behind me, there was this guy with his young son, and this was like the early 2000s. So technology wasn't what it is today. I don't know that iPhones even existed, but he had a phone or a camera or something that was able to take videos. And he was being just so disgusting and so vile during the women's matches and making very lewd comments about them and wanting them to do certain positions and talking about their various body parts and how he hoped that there was a wardrobe malfunction and all these different things. And it was just very, very gross, especially like me being a female that's kind of sitting in front of him. I'm just like, why? Like, are you just here for the one women's match that they're going to have on this program? Because he wasn't saying anything else the entire time. And it's just really gross to know that there are people out there that objectify the women and even the men. There are definitely some women that only watch wrestling for the physiques of the talent. And it's not just women doing it to men and men doing it to women. It can be, a man doing the same thing to a man. And to me, it's just not, it's just a major, major turnoff. I've seen many Twitter accounts that are just like vile, disgusting things about the bodies of the different female superstars that are on the various TV programs and just talking about like all the gross things that they want to do to them. And it's honestly just so disgusting. And it just blows my mind. Like, be into whatever you're into. However, still keep in mind that these are people. These are people with families, with friends, with children, with everything. And it's just like they're not here for your entertainment and for your objectifying and fetishizing and just all of the gross things that you're doing. It's not consensual. You're acting like you own this person and you 100% don't. And it's just, to me, nothing about any of that is okay. It's very gross. And it's still like, I just don't understand. I couldn't imagine like watching that content and that's all I can think about is just like the bodies. And that's just not the purpose of wrestling. Like, there's other websites for you if you're only wanting to like see things like that, and those are more of a consensual space. And there's just a lot of things that you can do besides taking advantage of people and commenting on their bodies also. I mean, that kind of goes into the next issue, but people can be very insecure about their bodies, whether it's a man thinking that he needs to bulk up or a woman that, is told that she has things in the wrong places or she isn't small enough or needs to have bigger body parts or just anything like that. It's just there are definitely some instances where it's just such a culture that is about your looks. And for a while in wrestling in the in the 90s, really, WWE was all about like the sexualizing of their roster. And, you had matches that women were involved in that definitely wouldn't even stand a chance today. And I'm glad that they've learned from those things, but it just kind of sucks that like we were ever at that point. And to see how far it's come, and now to, it's not that the women in the 90s and early 2000s were not talented, because they absolutely were. But you definitely have some people that probably would have never been considered for a role, at least on the major networks, because of the way that they looked. And that sucks. That sucks that, it's supposed to be like a sport. It's supposed to be about physical nature and things like that, and not really about your appearance. But in the 90s and early 2000s, at least in the women's wrestling aspect, it definitely was. And even then, you still have some organizations that discriminate against men for their physical features and maybe how small they are or how they're not as big as this person or something like that. It's almost like the bigger the better. But also you can't be like super overweight. And it's just, there's just such a stigma in all of it. And it's just like, I think now they're sort of starting to prove, at least with the men, that, you know, the bigger bodied men, whether they're bigger because of muscle or bigger just because that's how they're built, they are just as capable as the people that are like the perfect chiseled body that have a ton of muscle and are very athletic naturally. So I'm really liking that aspect, but at the same time, seeing how women were treated back in the day and now how they've come a long way. And there are still a lot of girls that are out there, you know, a lot of the women in WWE, not all, but a good amount have had some sort of plastic surgery for either something on their face or some sort of breast augmentation or something like that. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do to feel comfortable in your own body, go for it. No one should be criticizing you for that, because I feel like the same people that make fun of wrestlers, women wrestlers, for having breast implants would be the same people that would be making fun of them if they were flat chested. And it's sort of like, as a female in this specific industry, you really can't win, because you're either told, oh, you're too pretty and you're only here because you're pretty, or, you know, you're too ugly and you need to look better and get all this work done. And that's sort of true in a lot of aspects, but I think in this one, that's definitely an issue. And so sexualizing the women, you know, that doesn't make them feel great. And there have been instances where it's caused conflict. There are wrestlers that won't wrestle each other because of something that, you know, a family member said about them or something like that. And it shouldn't be about that. Like, there needs to be acceptance and love across the board for everybody. One of the things that I really like now is that a lot of the indie wrestlers, you get people that are very muscular and very built, but they're like, hey, like, I'm never gonna look like this chiseled god because as a child, you know, I was chubby or I was overweight. And once you get to a certain size in your life, even if you lose all the weight, you still are just built a certain way. And it is difficult to just, you know, look like everyone else. And that's one thing about humans, that everyone does look different. And I think that it's just time that everyone sort of realizes that. And I do like, on the men's side, what they're doing sort of with the bigger guys like Otis and Keith Lee and the WWE. I like how they're being treated. Even Ivar, before, I think he's out on an injury maybe, but even how like the three of them were treated. In Impact, you have AC Romero, who he is losing weight, but he's still very agile. And there's just so many others that they deserve to be there just as much as somebody like Roman Reigns, or back in the day, like The Rock and all of that. Like, they all deserve to be in the same business. Just because they look different, they have different abilities. There's different types of wrestling. You know, there's the high flyers, there's the grapplers, there's the traditional aspect. Like, there's just so many different things. Like, wrestling really is one of those things that is for everyone, but I feel like everyone still needs to have respect for the talent and for the craft, because there is, even though it is for everyone, there's still ways that it can be wrong. And we've seen that, you know, we've seen wrestlers that have been bullied online to the point that like they're depressed or they're going through stuff, and it eats at them and it eats at them and it eats at them. Like, you saw, if anyone watched the snippet from the Lana Chronicle, she was talking about, you know, how it affected her after Rusev was gone. And then just seeing, you know, everyone's been locked down with COVID. And so the only interaction that really anyone has had this year with fans has been online. And all they're seeing is negative stuff and people telling her, you know, to go kill herself. And that's that's tough for anyone to deal with. Like, imagine you just get a notification on your phone and you open it up and it's like a picture, like you had posted a picture, or you posted something that you were really proud of and that you really liked, and someone was just like, go kill yourself. Like, that's not okay for anyone to say to anyone. It's not okay. And so to get hundreds or thousands of those every day, like, that has to take an incredible toll on your mental health. And mental health is so important. I feel like I could do a whole podcast that's not even wrestling related about mental health and how it is so important. But I mean, Lana is just one person. And I think she has been given a really big push. And I'm hoping that they're really starting to take her seriously in the back. And it's not just, they're doing this because her husband is on a competing network now. And it's just trying to put them against each other somehow. I'm hoping that she's actually taking it serious and that people actually like her and she's going to get what she deserves, because I think that she is probably, I do not know her, but I would assume that she is a very nice, lovely person in real life. And even if she wasn't, she doesn't deserve that kind of hate. If you dislike her, you can say other things besides go kill yourself. Like, it's just not okay. And we've seen instances in the wrestling world and outside of the wrestling world where enough of those comments, and sometimes unfortunately it results in just that. We had the issue with Hana, and she's not here anymore because of internet bullying and internet trolls just going so overboard and saying things because they're just behind a keyboard and it doesn't have consequences and it doesn't really matter, and she doesn't matter. But like, she did matter and she does matter, and we lost a great person because of people behind their keyboards just not caring about humans, just wanting to be mean and wanting to say things to get attention. Because unfortunately, it's like this in a lot of ways. You give attention to the negatives, but you don't always give attention to the positives, because the positives, like, oh, okay, cool, that makes me feel good, but I don't need to respond. But then the negatives tend to be the things that get the responses, so it makes people write more negative things. I've heard a lot of instances of people like saying something negative to a wrestler and then they respond and they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you responded. Like, I love you. And it's like, but you just told me that I was like the biggest piece of shit that you've ever seen. And they're like, no, like, I just said that, like, I didn't mean it. Well, guess what? If all of the people that said, go kill yourself to Hana didn't mean it, it resulted in, the wrestling world and just the world in general. She had a family, she had friends, and they all lost an amazing person. And that can't come back. That can't change. So I think that everyone just needs to take a second and think about how you address people. If you don't like them, like, for example, MJF, heel, always in character, always everything. You can write him and he'll respond in a negative way, but he's never, like, it's still never okay to tell him to go kill himself, but you could easily just, like, question his character, go after his richness, like, make fun of his scarf, make fun of his anything. Like, there's so many things that you can do to engage with wrestlers in a heel manner. And just going for the go kill yourself is just the easy way out. It's an easy response that will potentially cause the most harm. I would rather tell someone, like, I hope that you get fired and lose all your money because you're not talented and your dog is ugly. Or I don't know, that's a dumb example, but I mean, saying something like that could potentially come across better and would get, that could make someone on the receiving end laugh and have a good back and forth, instead of just saying go kill yourself and then they're just like, well, great, what do I, like, there's not really a good way to respond to that. And yeah, it's not good. So, like, to anyone out there that has said that, one, if you're that type of person, I don't know that I want you listening to this podcast, but also just before you go, really think about what you're saying and think about if you were to wake up and have thousands of people saying that to you every single day while you're stuck in a pandemic where you can't really see a lot of your friends and family and you're just going through so much and you're just so emotionally exhausted already. And then all of a sudden you have somebody that you've never met, like a lot of them, and they're all just telling you that you're the worst person in the world, you're not talented at all, and that you should end your life because of that. Like, that is the worst. So I really want to stop that kind of culture because it's not okay. And as a wrestling fan, it makes me sad and disgusted to know that there are other fans out there that call themselves fans and they think that it's okay to treat human beings like that. Like, wrestlers are wrestlers. It's just like any other sport, just like any other job. I'm guessing that all of you have jobs. Everyone has a job for the most part. And just for doing your job, you're critiqued in that way. That's just not okay. Like, if at the job that I work at, if my customers started telling me to take my own life, it wouldn't be okay. It would not be okay. It's not okay. It needs to stop. And there are laws in place that are trying to prevent this stuff. I don't know if it's all countries, but there are a lot of them where if you tell someone to go kill themselves on the internet and then that person does, you can be held liable. And the internet stuff doesn't just get deleted. Like, if you were one of the people that told Hannah to end her life and then she did, you can't just delete the tweet and they're never going to find it again. That's on the internet in one way or another forever. So you have to live with that and live with the consequences. Live with that on your conscience. Imagine that. Imagine saying something like that to somebody and then they actually went through with it. You have to live with that for the rest of your life. All because you didn't like the way that someone looked, or you didn't like that they won a match against somebody that you liked, or something like that. Like, it's not okay, and it's not how we as wrestling fans should be treating the talent that we watch on a daily basis. So now that I've sort of gotten over some of the toxic parts of fandom, I would like to go over how I feel is the correct way to be a fan in this wonderful sport of professional wrestling. So there are many ways, but don't be afraid to speak up for what you like and what you don't like. But you can't just be like, I don't like that. But you can be like, I don't like that because it's been done. It's been done and done and done and done and done. WWE is very good at this. They reuse and recycle the same storylines over and over and over. A lot of people don't like things about AEW because they're directly digging at one company or another every week. And that's fine to criticize. It's fine to be a fan in that way and to say, I love you guys, but I wish that you didn't take a jab at Vince McMahon every week. You know, we don't want to compare the two. You say you don't want to compare the two, but every week you're making some sort of WWE reference. And so could you just stop? So those are sort of all good ways to get your point across as a fan that are good and constructive, but it still gets your displeasure out. You can boo, you can make signs that are trolling in a healthy way whenever you are allowed to be in a stadium. Being vocal with friends, having friendly conversations about the shows and being like, you know, maybe this guy wanted wrestler X to win, this person wanted wrestler Y to win. They can have a healthy, constructive debate on who should have won, what should have happened in the match, and why the outcome wasn't cool and they need to have a rematch or something like that. You can cheer for the people that you like, whether they're popular or they're not popular, because sometimes the way in this business to get people over is to cheer for people even when they're not popular, because then it cannot be ignored. There are so many instances, even with Rusev, with the Rusev Day thing, and Vince in Vince's mind, that was all a joke, but it was clearly not a joke to the fans. Daniel Bryan and his Yes movement, that was never supposed to be as big as it was, but people would not stop chanting. And it made them have to do something about it, because you can't just like mute thousands and thousands of people. The triple threat women's WrestleMania main event, that was something that was brought on by the demand of fans. I truly do not believe that would have been the main event as is, but because it was just requested and requested and requested and requested and requested, it was able to go through. And that was something that the fans did. They were able to, in a constructive way, voice their opinions and made themselves be heard. There are ways as fans to make yourselves be heard. If enough people agree on something or disagree on something and do it in a healthy way, it can make change. And that is not just in wrestling, that is in any aspect. And I think it's good to remember that. You know, we have a lot of younger generations of fans now that are growing up, you know, seeing, you know, I grew up and The Undertaker was new and now he just retired. And they're seeing all these new wrestlers, there's all this new technology, all these new moves, all of this everything. And it's just such a different generation. And some young people will just look at the screen and hop onto whatever bandwagon they can get on. But some of them are good at being constructive and have good critical thinking skills and can judge things for themselves. And I feel like those people really need to help out the people that they see not being able to necessarily voice their own opinions. I've definitely been there where I've been in a group of people and they all liked one thing and I liked the other, but because I was so scared of losing this group of people, I just sort of pretended to like the same thing that they did and the same wrestler. And really, I was like, I don't like this wrestler. Like, I mean, he's not bad, but I'm just not interested in him. And so now, as I'm older, I'm like, you know, if you're going to get mad at somebody for not liking the same wrestlers as you, then good luck, because no one's going to have the exact same list of top 10 or top 50 or top anything as you are. And that's one thing that makes everything great, because then you can have a discussion, you can have a debate, you can just have friends that disagree with you, but you have the common interests, so you're able to have these discussions over and over and over again. And that's an important thing to have as a fan, because then you can talk to anybody. I go to shows by myself a lot, and I end up just talking to the people that are next to me. And some of them have never been to a show before. Sometimes I've never been to the certain show before, and it's like, we're just talking about like what we've experienced at shows, what we've experienced at this show the last time it happened. And it's just so helpful. And it's great to make event friends, because they're the ones that are going to be there with you and they can give you the advice, whether it be not to wear white because you're going to get blood on you, or not to sit in certain areas, or this is the time to get up and go to the bathroom. This is the time to go to merchandise because this wrestler is going to be there. Just anything. It's so helpful. And we really can all come together and be such positive fans and positive people. You just have to know what you should say to people and what you shouldn't say. And just remember that wrestlers are real life people. They're just like you. They're just like me. They just have a different job. This is their job. They're more in the public eye, but they're all people. And words matter, and words hurt, and words have the power to change so much. They can make someone's day so much better, or they can make someone's day the absolute worst. And I would rather be the person that brightens someone's day than shatters everything. And I hope that you guys feel the same. So that's all I have for this week's PandaCast. Let me know what you think about being a wrestling fan, how you like to treat the wrestlers, if you've ever experienced any first or second hand wrestling toxicity, And please know that this podcast will always be a safe space, whether you're commenting on the YouTube version, you're messaging me on Twitter, anything like that. If you guys are ever having an issue in the wrestling world or just in general, like, I'm here to listen and will be as constructive and open-minded and helpful in solving the solution as possible. So that is all I have for this week's PandaCast. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.